Welcome to another episode of Move, Talk, Thrive. Today we are unpacking perfectionism and how it can be holding you back, both personally and professionally. Let's get started.
I'm Lizzie Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist.
And this is the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
So this is another biggie.
It is.
We're doing some big ones, lots of mindset stuff. Hey.
Yeah, it all comes back to mindset, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
So today we are talking about the big topics of perfectionism and anxiety.
Yeah.
And if perfectionism is holding you back or anxiety is holding you back in achieving in your career as a speech and EP and allied health professional or in life, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think perfectionism particularly, I just think it's one of those things that stops you from doing things, stops you from putting things out there, and potentially just is like an epic time waster.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because yes, it is. Perfectionism, it really makes you go around in circles.
Yeah.
It freezes you and you struggle to execute or implement. So
Or
it's a time waster, yes. It's a blunt way to put it.
or you do it. So I feel like I've got some perfectionistic tendencies, but I do it anyway, right? So I put it out there and I put myself out there, but it just makes me anxious. So I do it, but it just makes me kind of anxious all the time.
And neither is anxiety then is not good either.
No.
Yeah, I guess I guess let's talk about it. Let's break it. I was gonna like just jump and I was like, oh my gosh, we could go so many directions with this. So
yeah, so true.
So like perfectionism and anxiety is something we see a lot of our new grads having, and we see a lot of students having, and also it's an issue that if you are naturally a perfectionist, it affects you like your entire career. And it's something that we felt is along the lines of imposter syndrome, that not many people were talking about it. Everyone felt it, but now it can be labeled lots of different things, but it is along the lines of imposter syndrome in terms of let's talk about it, let's normalize it, let's talk about practical solutions of how we can address it and not let it hold you back, I think.
Yeah, and I think understand how it's impacting you, when it's impacting you, understanding the triggers, like just that generalized awareness around how you interact with that sort of tendency.
Mm-hmm. And we have to admit, we did feel like this sort of did affect us after we released the first season of this podcast. We had a bit of anxiety around that. We had a bit of imposter syndrome, which then we also were feeling a bit of perfectionism, and then also anxiety. So we had all three.
Yes.
And I mean, that's like we said, it did help receiving your positive and lovely comments and feedback, because that was one way that helped us overcome those feelings within ourselves. But it often, perfectionism, anxiety, it often, I guess, attacks you or comes at you when you're in a stage of growth, when you're feeling very uncomfortable, when you're feeling exposed because you're in a stage of growth. And it is always good to be in a stage of growth. So it's that fine balance of we should always be growing, but then we always then have to deal with these counter negative feelings and then work through those feelings at the next level every time we grow.
Yeah. And I think it's about understanding the underlying language that's underneath it. Like, is it coming from a place, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, what's the story that you're telling yourself that is, forcing you to go back and edit your notes 500 times, or, you know, not put something on Facebook, or some marketing out there, or not connect with another allied health professional, or, you know,
Or a
what's
parent
the, yeah,
in your sessions,
yes,
feeling
yes,
like really anxious in your sessions.
yeah. What is the underlying thought that's driving you to feel that way? I know when I had panic, so after I had the stroke, I had quite bad panic attacks every day. And my sister was like, oh, you just got to like label it, identify it, name it, and label it. And the thing with panic attacks is it comes on really, really quickly, and your body makes you believe whatever you think is happening, like whether it's a stroke or a heart attack or whatever. And so she got me to,
Sorry, your sister's a psychologist,
my
isn't
sister's
she?
a clinical
Yeah.
psychologist,
Yeah.
yes. So I was talking to her on the daily, and she said, just go, oh, there it is again. It's that panic. It's just that silly panic that's, you know, trying to fool me that I'm having another stroke, and I'm totally fine. And then I did like a body scan, but it was just that way I like started to talk to myself and understood where it was coming from. And, you know, like it was kind of reasonable for me to be panicking at that time. I'd just been through something massive. So it's also like looking at it in a non-judgmental sort of way, because I think with these things, we can be really cruel to ourselves and be quite judgmental on ourselves as well. So it was kind of deflating it by saying, oh, there it is again. It's just that silly panic that's trying to upend me today. And, you know, it's just panic again.
It's not reality. It's not actually what's happening. It's in my mind. It's separate, you know, like making it separate. It's not your
Separate to
identity.
you.
The panic is not your identity. There's no, because that's like, there's no power over that when you say it's not my identity, it's not the reality.
Yeah.
And sort of bringing yourself back to having
It's
that
like,
clear mind, a sound
it's
mind.
like, yeah, that's right. You are not your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is like that would be the podcast right there. You are not your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many thoughts. I don't know what the number is. We have so many thoughts per day. What is it? It's an insane amount of thoughts.
Is it like
We have
40,000 or something?
I think it would be more. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
saw
a
it
huge
recently.
number. We have an insane amount of thoughts every day, and if we actually believed what we're thinking, we would just be pulled in like 5,000 different directions every minute of every day. And how overloading is that for our minds? So you are not your thoughts is the first big thing, you know. And I think then, like you said, it's looking at what the underlying thought pattern is, which makes it's resulting in the behavior of perfectionism, right?
Yeah, that's right, because it's a behavior, isn't it?
So it's like, what story are you telling yourself?
Yeah.
You know, I don't, and a lot of it maybe comes down to trust. Like, I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I have put the correct information on this report. I don't trust that I have got enough information for this client. I don't trust that I've got enough research. So in that, it's like, okay, we've got to learn to trust ourselves. How do we do that? That looks different for every single person. There's different strategies and things, but it's actually, like you said, it's naming it and bringing it to light. Because if you don't know what it is, how do you work on it?
Yeah, that's right.
It's only when
And
you talk about it.
I think that we've got to get good at this, because regardless of what stage you're in, it's going to pop up. If it's a tendency for you as well, I think. So if you know that it's a tendency for you, then identify that story and work on that story. But also just you've got to get your head around it, because, you know, we just had it with the podcast. I've had it with my course. I had it at the ESSA conference when I did a speaking gig. Like, every time you go to that next level, it's going to pop up. So you've got to be able to go, oh, that's just that imposter, or that's just me being a perfectionist. I'm just going to go with this. What I've got is enough. I know enough. I'm smart enough. For me, it's like I know enough. I'm smart enough. I'm just sharing. And recently I did a masterclass for my launch, and we talked about initial consults and complex clients. And I talked to the group that was on about reframing everything to education. Like, can you just share, like, can you just educate? So instead of marketing, for example, and that's obviously quite relevant for what I do, because I do quite a lot of marketing around my courses and my businesses, but instead of marketing, I'm educating. And can we just like reframe it? So is there a way that you can reframe it to be something that is a little bit more tolerable for you?
Like, I'm learning, I'm growing. This is not the end of the world if I make a mistake.
Yeah. I'm
It's
helping.
life
I'm
or death.
helping.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I'm helping. I'm helping. And I think in lots of different industries, it's important that we know who's around us, because if you have, like, business owners generally are pretty high achieving, but then if you have a really high performing team or a high performing or high achieving team, there is research that shows in a high achieving team, or in even in children who are gifted, that can express itself in a higher level of perfectionism. A higher level of perfectionism and anxiety can be in those situations and environments. So we want to be a high perform. We do want to, work together as a team and have good results and do well. But it's aware of how we're managing the perfectionism and anxiety in that high performance
Yeah.
and achievement as well. And I guess that's from our point of view, like in teams, but then also with the children that we work with. Most of the children that we see in speech pathology, they're needing help and support, but there's also the other element of children, if they're perfectionism and anxiety can hinder learning as well for our children. So it's
Yeah,
addressing
absolutely.
that with our children as well. They don't need to be gifted, but that's what research says relating to gifted children. But
Yeah.
any child can deal and struggle with these issues as well.
And what I like to say to the people that come in and work with me is just remember, and we've talked about it before, but connection is key and connection is the most important. So if you don't know the answer, don't stress about that. It's not about knowing everything and being the best clinically. It's about connecting, because that's going to disarm anxiety. And don't forget that co-regulation is another huge piece in pediatric care. So if we're feeling anxious and you're working with a child that is predisposed to anxiety, that's not going to set both of us up for success. So if you come back to that connection, that is going to disarm that anxiety in both of you, like not just the child. But I don't know about you, but when even with my own kids or with a client, if I just forget and forget about the clinical and come down and think about connecting and playing, because I know the benefits of that connection, that makes me feel a million times better. And then if you think about it from the parent, the parent engagement, so you with the parent or you with the other allied health professional, if you just always go with connection, then you're setting yourself up for being in a better position.
Yeah, absolutely. Children are very intuitive. So we need to make sure that we are mindful of how that, can affect, like you're saying. And I guess, like, the same things that you're telling yourself is the same things that you're telling your child. It's okay if we don't get it right the first time. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. Don't get stuck, because don't make things too hard. Don't make things too complicated for yourself. We actually learn when we do, and then we do, and then we can redo again, but in a better way, or change the way that we did it. Or I'm here, as a therapist, I'm here to help guide you as you're doing, so that I can guide you to do it the way that you need to. That kind of using language doesn't need to be exactly like that, but using language around that is what we're saying to our children, but also what we should be saying to ourselves as well at the same time. So it's definitely across the board. Like, it is a normal thing, right? Everyone has it.
Yeah, on some level, don't they?
Yeah. And I maybe some people might be prone to it more than others. Do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not naturally a perfectionist at all, I would say, in my personal life. Like my husband is very much a perfectionist, and that's what made me realize I'm not a
Same.
perfectionist. That's what
Do
made me
you
realize I'm
think?
not a perfectionist.
Do you think maybe? I mean, you and I are quite similar, but maybe as business owners, you can't be a perfectionist because you're just
Yeah, you
like
just
you
need to
wouldn't
get
actually
things
have a
done.
business if you're a perfectionist.
Yeah. And because you just need to get things done, you just need to execute. And I'm a person where I will just execute
Yeah,
a 90% job
yeah,
and get it done rather than a
yeah,
100% job. And
yeah,
again, I am aware that sometimes that doesn't serve me well. Like in
yeah,
certain areas, I have to be like more on top of that. And I
yeah,
know that about myself, but in other areas, it's okay. So
yeah,
it's just I guess knowing yourself and
yeah,
knowing your disposition maybe and how that
yeah,
would affect you. If you're more prone to be an anxious person or a cautious person, then obviously it's going to affect you to a higher level than someone who's not.
yeah,
But it doesn't really matter how much it affect, like, you know, what you're prone to. Everyone experiences it and the effects are the same, right? We doubt ourselves, we have fear, we struggle to implement and move forward, and it freezes us. And ultimately, in a professional sense, it actually helps us not manage our time well. Like
yes,
you said, it's a massive time waster. So we spend too much time in planning, we spend too much time in administration, notes, and emails, or whatever it is, rather than moving forward in our tasks or moving the needle forward. So it's a bit like, I think you said it too, it's like the chicken and the egg. It's like imposter syndrome that then leads to perfectionism. Perfectionism leads to anxiety, and
yeah,
anxiety back up to imposter syndrome. You know, like it's
yeah,
just a vicious cycle. So we need to make sure that we are not letting it paralyze us, that we're okay with it, we normalize it, we voice it, and we talk about it, and move forward and we execute. So um, we can talk about strategies, I guess, of what we would do or what we did. I
yeah,
guess we've talked about a few things, um, and what people can do to practically help themselves.
yeah, absolutely. And I think what I do, and for me, yeah, I feel like imposter, the imposter is the underlying story, right? For me, I'm just thinking. Like I feel like the imposter syndrome, that I'm a fraud. Yeah, they're going to find me out, or all that. I don't know enough, or that's the story that leads into the perfectionism. I would say I'm not really a perfect perfectionist because I put stuff out there that is far from perfect, but I just get it out there, like you. But I think for me, when it all pops up, I kind of have reframed it and going, yeah, cool, I'm on the path because I'm doing stuff that scares me. This is scaring me. I'm on the path. This is what I got to do. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. Because some stuff hasn't worked out and it's, it sucks at the time, but it's okay. And you know what? So many things that haven't worked out for me have ended up being so much better because I've
A
had
really
to
good
like
point.
figure it out.
And that gives you, like, that's your skill set, right? It's helping you
Yeah.
become a problem solver, helping you
Yeah.
be creative.
And that helps you have trust and faith in yourself and your ability to overcome these challenges or yeah, it's evidence, isn't it? It's just about, and that's, things that I remember my sister kind of talking me through when I was in this, panic state. She's like, you've just got to gather evidence, just gather evidence. And I'm like, I know, but I've just had evidence that I can have a stroke at 33. This is not good. And she's like, yeah, I know, but you get through a day and, you start gathering more evidence. So gather your evidence. We like evidence. We're health professionals. We
What do you
like
mean by
that.
evidence? So evidence of
The contrary. So evidence that you're okay, or evidence that my course is good, or evidence that my business is success. Like
so
you
like you
gathering
like the feedback that we got from people. Like that's
exactly.
evidence.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
keep gathering the evidence and focus on that evidence, not, you know, the other. Like when
So
I
it's
did
flipping the
that,
mindset.
yeah. When I did that ESSA conference and I was telling you about it and you get all the feedback, oh my gosh, brutal. Now I had major imposter after that. So that really triggered me. But there was all this great feedback. And then there was like one or two comments that weren't. And I think about that all the time. So it's about consciously getting the evidence, consciously choosing to back yourself and trust yourself. And also telling yourself it's okay if it wasn't amazing. Like it does, like it's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Not being a perfectionist. It's okay.
Yeah.
That you got up. And it's, I guess, rewiring your thoughts to think about all of the good things and recall the good times rather than recalling the negative, or in that instance, the negative feedback. So it's rewiring, creating that new neural pathway, that loop in your brain.
Yeah.
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 So, and in that way, then what you're doing is encouraging yourself to trust yourself. So that's two practical things right there. So trusting ourselves, recalling the evidence. And I also think in line with that, it's then looking at as clinicians, looking at the evidence-based practice and going, yes, I do know what I'm talking about. This is backed by evidence, by research, clinical studies, proven evidence and data as well can also help. So then you are building yourself up by recalling that clinical component as well.
And that's what I love about what we do, is that it's evidence-based. So there's actually no room for doubt on it, because you can go look at the research. You can get, we know the data on it. We know it. So that is so empowering when we lean into that data. And when I'm feeling it, I just go and look at research and I get so excited because I'm like, I've got it. This is amazing. This is what I'm doing. Or I go and collaborate with other allied health professionals like you and I talking, about how movement and speech and language work together. And we go, oh yeah, this works and this works. And we look at research. It's just so empowering. So I think it's, taking that doubt to set up some habits of going, okay, once a week, I'm going to read a research article, or once a week, I'm going to review the evidence-based practice, or once a week, I'm going to do one thing that does this, and that sets my mindset, because that is really empowering.
Yeah. And then it sort of is a bit preventative as well, because you're doing it once a week to sort of stop that perfectionism becoming too big, that it stops you. Yeah. And in that way, then it's keeping it simple, right? It's not something you have to be actively thinking, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. Let's just keep it simple, put it into our daily habits, don't stew on it, whatever you need to do to be able to trust yourself, to get the research, that kind of thing.
And I think we can really, when we have this like perfectionistic tendency, we can overcomplicate things. So
Totally.
Comes with like that educating. So educating parents or working with the kids, or, whatever it is, we can overcomplicate that. And then it goes way over the other person's head. Because
and that's not going to help an anxious parent either.
No. And it's coming from a place of like needing, it's coming from the wrong place, because you're trying to prove yourself. Whereas if you go, okay, I'm going to connect here and I'm going to make this really, really simple. And I've done this before with educators. I kind of, my course is really in depth, and I've realized that I actually need to strip it all back, make it really practical and really simple, and give them like a 5-minute thing to do each week, because that's what they digest. So I think thinking about maybe taking it off yourself and thinking about the other person and what they need in this
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, Lizzie. So because often when you're, stuck in this perfectionism, anxiety, your focus is on yourself. And so you're thinking, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z and make it a bit more complicated. However, if a parent comes in with a child, so say the child is having difficulties and the parent is really anxious, and the parent is putting their perfectionistic, that's not a word, their perfectionism tendencies on their child, that then actually blocks the brain for learning. Because if the child is anxious or struggling, they're not going to be able to receive new information and learn, because they're not in that mode of security and safety.
Yes.
So we actually, as clinicians, need to be very careful about how we are then letting that practically impact our sessions. And often parents might micromanage or hover because they are perfectionists. So we don't want to encourage that tendency in them to then make our child, anxious or putting that on the child themselves.
Yeah.
So we have to remember it from another person's point of view, the damage that being a perfectionist can have in our clinical sense on our children and our parents. And that's quite a harsh statement, but it actually is to snap us into reality, be like, okay, we actually cannot afford to be putting these tendencies into our sessions because it's not going to help our children learn. So sometimes you need a little bit of a snap into reality when you're stuck in these moments, right?
Yeah.
And we want children to be having self-esteem. We want them to be having confidence and a sense of belonging. Perfectionism and anxiety is the exact opposite of that and does the exact opposite. And that's the results it brings. So we need to be giving our children the feedback and watching the language that we're using with them. So
Actually, since we've had this conversation preparing today, I've noticed how often I say perfect.
oh yes, that's the point I was going to say next.
I
Yes,
know.
we chatted about it. So it's I learned this as a parent, but also as a clinician. It's saying to children, often we can say to children, oh, that's perfect, perfect.
Perfect.
That's perfect. Like you've done this, or whether it's even something simple like, well, can you just set the cutlery or can you just get me a cup? Perfect. And so we need to be very conscious in a clinical setting. We cannot be using that feedback because that's encouraging perfectionism.
Yeah.
And consider this, if you were then always told this your entire life, is this what is affecting you in your ability to trust yourself? And all the things we're talking about, often the thoughts that we have and the cycles that we have can be what other people have told us, whether we've had really cautious parents and parents who are afraid to sort of, as kids, like let us explore. Things like that can be in our mind.
Yes.
But yes, it's very common that we say, oh, perfect. I still have to watch myself with the girls. But we're just more wanting to praise them on their efforts and
Yep.
what they've done and sort of saying, oh, I love, like, you, even the behavior. I loved how you smiled when you did that. I loved how, like, you're praising the result that you want. So if you're saying that's perfect, you're praising their perfectionism, which is exactly what we're saying now as an adult holds us back.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're contributing to that inner dialogue, really.
Yeah. So it's being so aware of that, isn't it? And being so aware of how we impact another, I guess, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And having that as a strategy, like that could even be like, as a new graduate, that could be a part of your clinical plan, or one of your goals for yourself is, okay, I'm going to make sure that if I am prone to being a perfectionist, I'm then going to make sure I go the step and think of the patient or the client or the parent, and then put a practical step in that I'm not going to spend more than X amount of time on this. Like, ask people in your workplace who have accomplished what you want to do. Say it's a report or a session plan. If they say they spend 10 minutes on planning or 15 minutes on planning, you make sure that you don't do 30 minutes. So, you have something to work towards, a limit.
Yeah. I'm definitely not a perfectionist because I don't plan. I do plan. I love planning, but in terms of like going in and doing like this, for example, like we've done a bit of preparation, but I don't like looking at the notes. Like I'm like, I just want to flow because I know when I flow, I'm like, I just am, it's more natural and everyone's different, but it's just as you're talking.
I think it depends on the situation you're in, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to be aware that if you're in a situation that you feel really comfortable in, you're probably not going to be having as much, perfectionism or anxiety. But the minute you go into a situation that's new, which is growth, we're just talking about, that's when these feelings assault you. So for often, as a new graduate, that can be a new session or a new clinical situation that you need to deal with, or a new diagnosis or a new parent. But once you get good as a clinician, you might not feel this as much anymore. It might be different things. So it's aware of the situation and having that self-awareness for each environment.
Yeah. And then I think sharing that as well, right?
Yeah,
like with
talking.
either a colleague, accountability buddy, or supervisor, whoever you kind of have got in your team.
Could be a professional even.
Yeah. I think just saying, I'm spending a lot of time on this because I feel like that perfectionism is coming out. And then, you can almost map out a plan based on what we're talking about here. You go, okay, I'm naming it, and then go, okay, what's going to help me in that? Maybe some evidence-based research or data, or, seeing what someone else is doing and then taking the initiative to do that. And then trying not to overplan and going into a session and focusing on connection and simple, clear communication, and see how that gather the evidence, see how that works.
Put a plan in place. And that can be the hardest thing for a perfectionist, is then going to ask someone for help, because they're stuck in the perfection. Like, I have to be perfect before they even go and ask someone for help.
Yeah, because it feeds into that story that I don't know enough. I'm not good enough.
So that's the real benefit of an accountability partner, or a coach, or a colleague, like you said, in the team, or like we said, you could even be seeing a counselor or a psychologist, like professional help as well.
If it's really holding you back, I think that's, or causing you anxiety. Like, it causes me anxiety, I see a psychologist.
Yes, for professional help and strategies. The reason why you see someone is because they've got the strategies there, they've done the training. But definitely having a plan, and also sometimes having some templates or some systems can be helpful. Like I said, guidelines. So, we need guidelines with everything. So how long does it take to write a progress note for an experienced clinician? How long does it take to write a report for an experienced clinician? How long does it take to plan a session? Chat to those experienced clinicians, or get some guidelines. There should be guidelines in your workplace, templates, systems like report templates, progress note templates, and systems to help you, to pull you back, from getting stuck and frozen. And so you know what you're working towards, and when you've veered off the path, then when to ask for help straight away and not sit in it.
Yeah. Love it.
I think as well, we can, I don't know what you'd say to this one, but sometimes I feel like you just need to throw yourself in the deep end a little bit, which is really hard to do if you're a perfectionist and you're stuck in that cycle. But sometimes, I guess this is a part of trusting yourself, but just going, okay, I'm just going to do it. Or like you said with the podcast, I'm just going to do it rather than have planning. Sometimes we just got to do it. But
I don't back ourselves.
I don't mean it in a reckless way though, right? It's like, it's because you know your stuff, and you've just got to trust that you know your stuff. So only you can know when you get to that point. Like, don't be reckless about it, but sometimes you've just got to throw yourself in the deep end of what feels like the deep end for you. And that might be like doing a session and you've only planned for 5 minutes instead of 20 minutes, and because then in doing that, you gather the evidence and you go, oh, actually, I could do that. Actually, I landed on my feet. I got thrown a curveball and I actually did it. I coped with it. The child came in, the behavior was off. I coped with it. So you've got to develop that. Like you said, you can't recall if you haven't thrown yourself in the deep end sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
and like we say, mastery is messy.
Yes, I love that one. We don't get everything right in the mastery process. It's very like that graph, that graph where people think like mastery is just one straight line up. And it's really like just all this scribble. Like that is mastery. And then that's how we then progress up. So we have to be okay. And there's obviously the hardest thing, because perfectionism, I want to be perfect. But you have to realize mastery is not, it's messy.
And I think, what is perfect? Like, is there perfect for a perfectionist? Is there, I don't think so.
I don't think there is. Because there's always something better that you can do, and always some way that you can improve, or someone else can improve on what you've done.
Yeah.
Always. That's how we've got a better world, with new inventions. So it's probably never going to be perfect.
No, it's just perfect for right now. So
yeah. I like that. That. Perfect for right now. That's what people need to be saying. It's perfect for right now.
Yeah.
And then I guess you can also then set up in your team, say you say something's perfect for right now, you can then get someone to run their set of eyes over something. Or say you could do a trade with someone in your team. Say if you're both doing notes or reports or session plans, you could say, okay, I'm going to check your plans, you check mine. Or maybe reports, like I check yours. So you can do sort of a bit of a trade system like that as well, to help you get through the messy phase of mastery.
And I think a really important note here is, particularly if you're working with kids with complex conditions, is that progress over perfection is key, because they're not going to, perform something like a typically developing child necessarily. And it's about not, you need to be able to problem solve. You need to be able to try things and it not work and then think differently to get the best results. One of our values at Kids Heart Pilates is that we focus on the glimmers, and it's progress over perfection, because we like that for ourselves and we like that for our clients. So it's like an overarching value for us, which I think is really important.
I like that. Focus on the glimmers. That's cool. Very cool. And then you've got to also then remind your parents of that as well, because often then the child will achieve something and the parent will go, yeah, but that's not like how an adult will say it, or that's not how an adult would do it, or that's not how I think it should be done. And it's highlighting all the little progress steps equal them achieving the goal. And parents continually need to be reminded of that because they don't understand. And I think we can do that in our sessions with having like declarative language. So creating a safe environment, and really having that solution focused language, like we were speaking about before, but also just really understanding clinically, that what our solutions are for our children and what we expect from them, and being very clear with our parents about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about aligning expectations, isn't it? It's finding, a common goal, and then aligning where we would expect someone to be, and then focusing on the progress towards that.
Yes.
In ourselves and in our teams and in our clients and parents, because we're all, we're human. We're all going to struggle with this and have tendencies around it, some more than others. So it's working within our, within what we've got control over, and always trying to do our best.
Yeah. And we can only control ourselves. Yeah. Ourselves. That's it. So, I mean, the be all and end all is that we do struggle with perfectionism and anxiety. Everyone does it to a different level, particularly when we're growing. So in our new grad phase, that is eminent. However, it is not all negative. It is positive. There is a light at the end of the tunnel with just doing a few practical solutions and figuring out what works for you, having that self-awareness, and sort of making sure that you've got support around you and systems around you during those times when you're growing and learning. So we hope that this has been really helpful and really practical for you. If you are struggling with perfectionism, if you're struggling with anxiety or even imposter syndrome, know that you're not alone. Know that there's loads of people who have walked the road before you, have experienced the same thing or are experiencing the same thing. Make sure you talk to those around you, and make sure that you then get the support that you need so that it doesn't stop you from implementing and reaching your greatness as a clinician. So thank you so much for listening to our episode today. We will be chatting to you again next week. If you would love to leave us a review, we would love to hear what you would think on our podcast channels. And until then, stay tuned.